All right, awesome. Well, welcome everybody to the second seminar of the semester. I'm Andy Horgan. I'm going to do the introduction and help sort of moderate the questions afterwards. So, Dr. Burgner has worked as a horticultural consultant and an outdoor nursery manager for a local garden center in Baton Rouge, as a garden manager at Live Oak Gardens in New Iberia, Louisiana, which is a beautiful place, and we just made the connection that I've been there because that's where my brother got married. So I can personally say it's a very beautiful place. Also as a garden designer and manager at a private estate, also in Louisiana. For 14 years, he owned and operated his own landscape construction and maintenance company in Johnson City, Tennessee, Floriburst Horticultural Specialists, before selling the business to return to academia. Dr. Burgner currently teaches the courses related to landscape design, construction, and maintenance for the Department of Horticultural Sciences at Texas A&M University, and advises the Tamio Horticulture Club. His interests include sustainable landscape preferences and practices, historic landscape preservation, socio-horticulture, public horticulture and gardens, valuation methods of public green spaces, urban and consumer horticulture, and horticulture for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So let's give him a round of applause. Dr. Burgner, it's all yours.
All right. Hear me all right? All right. Oh, yeah. Got to start out. Howdy. Howdy. Okay. I usually start out with a silly, stupid joke. So here goes. So there was these gentlemen that were on a golf course. They had finished golfing for the day. They come into the clubhouse, going into the locker, and the cell phone rings. So the gentleman picks it up, answers the phone, and there's a lady talking on the other end. She said, "Hey, honey." He says, "Hey." She said, "I've been out and about today. I've been shopping a little bit. And you remember we were talking about, there's this Lexus I was interested in?" He said, "Sure." She said, "Well, they've got them on sale now for about $90,000. And so she said, "Do you think I should buy it?" He said, "Well, see if they'll take $80,000 for it, and if not, stop at $85." She said, "Oh, okay, that's great." She said, "Oh, by the way, there's that house down the road that was for sale. They've got it for sale, and it's a good value. It's about $500,000." The guy says, "Okay." She said, "What do you think? Think I should buy it?" He said, "Well, see if you can get $450,000 out of it and stop at $475." She said, "Oh, you're awesome, honey." She said, "I'll talk to you later." He said, "Okay, bye." So he hung up the phone, and he looked at the guys, and he said, "Anybody know whose cell phone that was?" So I tell stupid jokes to make a point. So a lot of times we make decisions without understanding the whole picture, right? So we need to understand the whole picture. So that's why I brought that story to talk about quantifying plants in public spaces. Because a lot of times we look at the economic benefit or the economics of it, since that's so easy for us to value, but we forget the plant aspect. And for many years, many decades, we were so concentrated on the economic aspect, the property values, the real estate, that we forgot about the plants. And we realized, okay, we were destroying ourselves by not having plants in our environment. Oh, now you're not going to work, huh? Okay. Always happens. Yep. Aha. So how many's been here? Anybody know where this is at? This should give me a big giveaway. They don't make those in Texas naturally. That's in Houston, yeah. Yeah, I've been there. A lot of people have been. That's the Millennium Park. And this is the other park. Right beside of it. It joins the main park. You've got the big, what? I think that's what it is, yeah. So that's in Houston, downtown Houston. So it's a big public space, and they have an urban horticulture garden. They have a rose garden that Dr. Welch consulted on them with. And I don't know, it's just a nice little awesome space. So what would be the value of that? There are ways to measure that. So what we're going to look at is the beginning, the middle, and the end. That's what every PowerPoint has, right? That's supposed to be a joke. You can laugh at it. We're all having fun here. So we're going to talk about why people want to be around nature, the importance of quantifying public green spaces, and tools that can be used to quantify those spaces, and why they are important. Of course, there's going to be interesting information on this. So as I said, often we have looked at, getting crazy with the laser pointer, looked at the real estate value, and a lot of times we still see the real estate value over the park value. And we think in our minds that the real estate value is more valuable than the park value. I'll get that said right here in a minute. So it's almost a real estate versus park space. So especially when it comes down to planning for park spaces, is that space going to generate enough tax dollars to compensate for what would technically be generated by a business or something like that? So not having some hard data for officials to go by, you'll end up like the guy in the golf course, just making decisions without understanding what's going on. So, can you actually quantify public spaces? Of course, yes you can with the proper tools. So, this is, everybody knows what this is, right? How many's been there? You have. I've not been able to go there yet. That's on my bucket list. So this value, there's a nice little sum of money right there. So give me an idea of what that value means. Just guess. Huh? $500 million. Is it $500 million? And what does it represent? $656 million is, what does that figure represent? Just give me a value. What it could be sold for? Real estate value? No. But that's a good answer. Value of the improvements will help those. No. That's a good answer, though. So you're looking at things, good. Give me another answer. Value of the land. Value of the land? No. Nope. Tax revenue. Tax revenue. Who said that? Yes. Our economists back there. Tax revenue. So it gets better from here. What's this value? Yeah, that's the real estate value of Central Park itself. Now, in 1923, the value of Central Park was $225 million, which in today's money, that would be about $3.6 billion. So look how much value has increased from, what, 100 years? 1923? So what was worth $3.9 billion, that is, we figured that out in my head, about 12 times more in value. So that does not include the Central Park effect, which is all this real estate right along the edge of Central Park. That runs up in the billions and billions of tax revenue, just in the travel, tourist dollars, hotels, real estate, residences. So this park has a much greater effect. Okay, what about ecosystem services? You think it's going to be higher or lower? Ecosystem services, the environmental benefit, will be higher. How much higher? What? Priceless. Yeah, that's a MasterCard commercial. It's priceless. Anybody got a guess? Give me a guess. Just throw a number out. Trillion? No, not that, but you're almost there. 500 billion just in ecosystem services. You're halfway there, or doubled it. And that's just a conservative estimate. It probably is worth about $1 trillion. So there are methods they use to figure this out, and there's all these tools that we can do. There's monetary tools, there's non-monetary tools. And I'm not going to go through all those. I'm just say you can do market price, what's the real estate value, market cost, what it actually sells for. You've got, what else you got? Contingent methods, non-monetary. So you can do all kinds of methods to figure out the cost of this. So for the person not educated on this, it can be a little overwhelming, right? You might know who this is, right? The younger ones, you know who this is? Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean, this is when he was taking his math test. And he was, you know, the whole time he had the wrong test. So again, you're making assumptions off of the wrong information. So anyway, so the excuses for not valuing is you have lack of capacity. These are good reasons, so they're not really excuses. That's what my dad always said. Do you have a reason or do you have an excuse? An excuse means you just don't want to. Lack of capacity means you don't have either you don't have the amount of staff to conduct these things, or you don't have the skill set to do that. You don't have the funding to do it, or you have a lack of workforce diversity to conduct these assessments. But this is the one that you really have to kick back on. This I can understand, but this you have entrenchment. This is the way we've always done it. This is what's going to bring in the most money. Even if you show me the data, I'm still going to stay with the way I've been doing it. Just what is it? And just reluctance. If you don't know how to do it, you may be more reluctant instead of taking time to do it. And then you never really consider the public green space as valuable, right? Which is, again, that's been a changing trend. It is more important now than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago. So, the beginning. Why do people want to be around nature? Actually, I got it backwards in the slide, but that's okay. We'll get there. Go back to the theory. Why do people that? So we've got overload and arousal theory. Some of y'all have seen this before. Learning experience theory and evolution theory. This is where I should have started, but I got it backwards. That's okay. And the most important thing, the audience won't miss the point of your presentation. That's important to remember. Don't remember that. Don't forget that. So the overload and arousal theory, it means the modern world is complex. We have a lot of things going on that distract us, and it overloads our senses and stresses us out, right? So an environment dominated by plants helps us feel better. And there's a lot of research to back that up. And I'll show you some of that a little bit later. So it's just like the typical bell curve. Too much stress, and then it causes us a lot of health issues, causes gray hair, and causes you to lose your hair. And if you have not enough stress, then you become fatigued and inattentive. So relate this to plants. So plants need what? If plants are overstressed, what happens? They die. Who said that? They die, yeah. If they're not stressed enough, what happens? Well, they die, but they're too weak. They want fruit. So you take, for instance, a tree. When you plant a tree, you stake it. If you stake the tree, if you leave the stake on there, what happens to the tree when you take the stake off? If you leave the stake on, say, 3 years. It'll lodge. Yes, it could lodge. Why? Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So that's what happens with us when we don't have enough stress. We don't, when it comes time to have stress, we're not as resilient. So that's a good answer. Somebody listened in horticulture, right? So yes, so the overload and stress. So we need the right amount of stress, and plants can help us keep in that optimal range. So the learning experience theory. So what happens as a child influences as we grow older, right? So we have fond memories. Give me your first memory. Somebody give me their first memory of being in nature. I'll give you mine. Mine was with my grandparents. We went there on the weekends. Both of my sets of my grandparents had farms, And that's where I spent a lot of my summers. And they would spend a lot of times outdoors, didn't spend much time indoors. And so we got to enjoy nature. Somebody else. This is participatory, yes.
Walking in the woods with my dad and playing in the forest.
The forest primeval. Ah, yeah. Anybody else? I'll get one more before I go. God, come on, I'm going to call on you like I do in class. Yes, Sarah. Blackberries. Yeah. I hated picking blackberries because the ones that I had were thorns all over. And my aunt liked to pick it on. So the reason I've shown this was I was a judge for a 5th grade science fair. And, you know, most of the science fair projects were the little volcano or the, you know, you put the Mentos in the 2-liter bottle and all that. But these 2 little girls, they were twins. And they were so proud of their little project because for those in floral design, you'd appreciate this. They wanted to see what technique would preserve flowers the longest. And of course, this is the one that survived the best. And of course, they went from on succession down to the least successful. Of course, this was the preservative that you get in a little pack. That's of course that's most successful. You can see what this one is right here. Can you tell what that is? A penny. Yeah. So a penny actually helps preserve. So if you don't have the pack, put a penny in it. So they were so proud of that. So but my point is, they'll remember that because they actually placed in the science fair. And so they'll remember that as they go on in life, that they had this good experience with plants. Now, the good one that Dr. Hall would appreciate, the predisposition of people to be around nature. This is also known as what for you socio-horticulturists? The innate nature, or the innate characteristic of the people to be around nature. Starts with the B. Biophilia, that is correct. You get 100 for today. So biophilia. So we want to be around nature because what did we do when we were first humans on this earth? What did we do? What were we? We didn't sit in a house watching TV. What'd you say? Predators? Primitive. Yeah, we were predators too. We were primitive. We were hunters and gatherers, which meant we were outdoors looking for our food. And even as agriculturalists, when agriculture developed, we were still outdoors working for our food. So we have this innate nature for wanting to be outside. All right. So the importance of quantifying public green spaces. This will give you a little background. I've given you a little clue. So allocation. So if you quantify, if you have something there to show the officials, then you can get more money to do what needs to be done to conserve, protect, and restore our natural environment. Opportunity costs. It can justify decisions to have certain things in our cities, and the most important thing is just what makes sense to us. We can understand money, right? We know if we can put a value on it, we can understand what it's going to cost us. Shake your head, you're still with me. All right, very good. So here's a little breakdown of everything else we've done. For those who were here 2 years ago, you probably saw this. Our economic value is fed by environmental stewardship, education, socio-horticultural, social center, and cultural centers. And all of these economic values of lower health costs, increased tourism, increased employment, well-being, and preservation of our natural resources. So that's why it's important to quantify our green spaces. So more in the middle. Let's talk about the tools. So a few years back, I did this little research and wanted to test all these little tools that are out there. And these were online tools. And I've broken down into environmental, you can't see it at the top, environmental, social, and economic variables. So you can see there's a long list of environmental variables, few social, and some economic. So I evaluated a bunch of different tools, and out of all those, 81% evaluated environmental aspects. Social was about 38%, and economic 34%. And I broke them up into groups. So we've got all these tools. I'm just showing you the tools that are available. And these are online. Most of these are, as far as I know, free, open access. So if you want to get into forecasting or green infrastructure, stormwater management, then these are some tools that you can use. Now Invest is a very complicated tool. Even though I took the training, I still don't quite understand how to use it, but it is very reliant on GIS systems. It is a very thorough system that measures natural capital. That may be here a word you may hear used a lot in environmental assessments, is natural capital. Another group, I've grouped these by performing a principal component analysis, and it fell out into these groups of by variables. If you want to do the green infrastructure, then the variables included in that: activity level, bicycle friendliness, scenic quality, and these were all grouped together based upon that analysis, and those are the tools that fell into those categories. It keeps going. If you want to measure the impact of trees and pest issues, then you've got the iTree, green value, stormwater management, and natural tree benefit. What's interesting is the Environmental Protection Agency provides a lot of these tools for us. They have created a lot of these tools. The iTree was developed by the Forest Service, actually, and I think it was Davey Tree Company. Aquatic habitat, or our blue space. We have green space. We also have blue space, or access or proximity to water. And so there's some Invest. iTree pops up again, value of green infrastructure. So there are some tools out there. We've got two more groups. Economic impact of cultural activities, and you got a little bit more variables here, and then there's iTree again, Invest. So some of these tools measure a lot of these variables. And then lastly, look at this. There's a whole bunch right here. Energy and recycling. And I didn't include any of the examples on this, but a lot of this you just input data, and it runs an algorithm for you and spits out the value of what it's worth. So there they are, all grouped together. But the overall one that seemed to be a pretty reliable one is iTree, and it's very easy to use. And it uses satellite imagery, and you go in and you can identify what's a tree, what's turf, what's building, and it gives you a value based upon carbon sequestered, particulate matter, nitrate, and other particulate matter. And then it gives you a value on all of that that's sequestered. So I did a case study with the city park system at College Station. We did 6 parks ranging from an average of about 8 acres up to 515 acres, so to get a wide range. And when I input the information for those parks, it came out to about $5.6 million per acre of value. So you figure the number of acreage that the city has, 5.6 million times that acreage, that's a pretty significant number just in College Station. So most of these measure environmental aspects real well. The one that was not quantified as reliably was the social aspects. But I did find one about quantifying health benefits. And so that does get into some of the social realm. Like I said, you can get the environmental and the economic aspects pretty well, but the social one's a little more nebulous. It's more difficult to get into. So there's a tool that's been around called the Quality Adjusted Life Year. Anybody familiar with that one? So what it does is it places a value on if you lived in perfect health, you get a value of 1. If you're dead, well, Tennessee came out then. If you're dead, you get a value of 0. So what they can do is do a measure of time and utility. So they can do a cost utility analysis or assessment, and you can come up with the value of the health benefit. And they're using this, in Europe is leading the way, of course. They're using this to quantify the value of green spaces. Traditionally, they had been using cost effectiveness analysis or assessment. Anybody know the difference between cost effectiveness and cost utility? So anybody remember their logistic models? Anybody done? I'm sure y'all have done in grants, right? For those of you who've done grants, you have to do a logistic model, right? A logic model. Yeah. So what is the two end pieces on that logic model? You've got your inputs, your outputs, and your outcome, right? So your cost effectiveness analysis only measures output, which, you know, the number of, so in this case, health, the number of your heart rate, I'm trying to think of another one, the number of, anyway, it's just output. It doesn't give you an outcome. The outcome is a change in something. If you remember that from your logic model, okay, yeah, so it's a change in something. So the beauty of this tool is that it measures the outcome. So if you have an intervention, then it can measure that intervention and show the change and the benefit of that change. So picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So here you're dead again. And it's without the intervention. This is typical. You've got perfect health, or you can be dead. So this is your typical lifespan. But if you do an intervention, then it extends your lifespan. And so what they've been able to do is measure physical activity in green spaces and equate that to quality adjusted life years and how much it'll add. So we're reaching the end. I'm going to give you the benefit or why public green spaces are important. I'm coming back to that. There is research indicates that psychological benefits for older people who are physically active have better mental health. And some of the research has been mixed as far as the direct benefit of green spaces, as far as causality, but it seems to be that in other words, just because you're near green space does not mean you're going to be healthier. That means you actually got to do something. So you may have green space all around you, but if you're still sitting in the house watching TV, you're probably not going to have the health benefits of being out. So this is where physical activity comes into play. So those who are physically active have better mental health. It has also been shown using this tool here, which I didn't evaluate in my study, and now it escapes me what that's for, the difference vegetation indices. I forget what the N stands for. But anyway, for individuals who were exposed to green space had lower suicide rates. Now, a lot of this does depend on certain situations that are going on in their life, but for the most part, individuals did not commit suicide like in other areas where there was not as much green space. Property values. Of course, that's been well known that green space increases property value, just like Central Park, right? Yeah, right? Still with me? Yeah, okay, my head's nodding. So there's an issue, though, with the increased property values when you come to equity. What would that issue be? We talked about that in class, Jennifer. Yes? Somebody say something? Who said something? Yes. Gentrification. Yes. Yes, exactly. So you may create these green spaces for lower socioeconomic individuals, but what happens is it increases the property value, and then they're not able to afford that. So there's a downside to green space in that sense. General health. Being surrounded by green space is associated with better overall health. This also goes hand in hand with being able to see green space. That studies have been shown that students who can see green space have higher test scores. I don't see any green space in here other than maybe out there. We need a window out there so we can look out in the atrium. So, Dr. Lineberger will appreciate this because that was my exam question that he gave me. Is when he gave me his prelim question, I had to come up with a grant for a conservatory, and so my conservatory had a classroom in it, full-size classroom surrounded by plants. in a conservatory. Not realistic, but hey, it was a great idea for having to get it done in 4 hours. All right, so consider this. This is getting back to my quality adjusted life year. 8.23 million adults made at least one active visit to natural environments in 1 week. This is the study that I'm referring to. So of that 1.23 billion active visits annually equals 150 minutes per week to be considered physically active. That is, what, about 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. That's not much to be physically active. So that equates in a social value of $3 billion. It's a pretty significant number. It gets better. So walking an additional 36 additional minutes per week, people will walk an additional 36 minutes per week when they have a better green space to walk in. So people will walk longer, in other words. So that one extra walk, 36 minutes, is a value of about $19. That's not much, but when you figure that annual health cost, you're saving $982 in health costs. So that's a pretty significant number. To improve just by improving walkability. So this is usually with public municipalities that have a walkability program. They can improve a person's health, saving them by $982 a year for one person. Okay, keep going. So the annual health value of physical activity in an aquatic environment, or the blue space, is $244 million. Per person value of ecotherapy, so this is for those who have maybe some psychological or mental issues, that's a $589 value. So that's, that would be the cost if that person had to continue psychiatric treatment. One ecotherapy program would be just going out in the green space, because again, Europe actually prescribes people to go out in the green space as part of their prescriptive treatment. The value of $589. So having, talking about blue space, which goes hand in hand with green space, if you have an aquatic center, say you're in College Station, if it's closed for 1 day due to high contamination water, you're losing $19,000 in revenue. That's a pretty significant number. So that's just some numbers to think about. So there are some benefits in quantifying green space, because they do provide a perspective for environmental and socio-economic impacts, but also they provide mental and health benefits in economic terms. Like I said, that's been one that's been a little bit harder to grasp hold of, because it is a little bit more nebulous, because you have to do a longer term study to see if the outcome is actually being effective. And that's where the physical activity as an intervention can come into play. And once you've got some good hard data and get to educate the people who are giving out the money or appropriating the money, then you can leverage funding for green spaces by having reliable data. So you're not as overwhelmed anymore, right? You're happy and you're in your blue space or green space. You got blue and green there both, right? All right. Hey, we're done. I will turn it back over to Andy. Let's have some questions. Yes. Okay, I can do it. Yeah, I got Mike. I haven't come across any of those, no. There are some that do almost a life cycle assessment of maintenance, but there are none that have to do with replacement that I've found anyway. That would be a good one, though. Maybe we can come up with one. Do you have a question? Yes. Light pollution? I have not come across any of those, no. That's not to say that there's not any out there, but I haven't come across any. Mason? Yes. No, the iTree is actually open access, so anybody can access that. It's a little more complicated. There is another tool, the National Tree Benefit Calculator. That's very simple. You just put in the type of tree, the caliper, and I think the age of it, if you know the age, and it'll give you a value. But the iTree is a little bit more thorough. But yeah, you just Google iTree and it'll pop up. Yes.
So to back on what area he was talking about, you also have STAR. What is that?
Star.
Yeah, STAR.
Uh,
You know what that stands for?
I'm trying to remember what that stands for. It's mainly for larger communities. So it's taking a sort of an overall assessment of different things that the community is doing. And but yeah, I forget what it stands for, but it's more on the community level. Yeah, and it tests a lot of different things. Yes, Dr. Pearson.
So when you present these data, you have to get some buy-in from the model. So you probably have to slow down on types of things that the model's value. You get pushback then where say, I don't think that the right things were in the model. So for example, we don't have maintenance or replacement costs or things like that. And so what do you do then? Are you giving them a number? You come across as someone reliable, how do you get them to buy in? Kevin, I would like you to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I've been so good about doing that. So she was asking if this data was presented to a group of people, and you get pushback as far as them not totally buying in on the data, how would you deal with that? I think it would take several conversations to just educate them about that, and maybe because some of these, there are multiple tools that will measure the same thing, so doing a different assessment from a different angle and trying to get it, if you can provide the same data with a different tool, that maybe give them more validity and credibility. That's the only way I could think of. Yes, Andy?
So, like when you say that Central Park is worth $500 billion, in my mind, I don't know how much money, like that's just a
It's a large number, yes.
So, but what is that land worth, like, in like economic value? Like if you were to replace Central Park with like high rises and like stock exchange stuff, wouldn't it be worth far more than $500 billion? How would you, like 500 is big, but what is that compared to?
Yeah. So the question was if the economic value of Central Park, if it was all buildings instead of Central Park, and that was what that $49 billion was. That's based upon the market value of Manhattan at $1,250 a square foot. And so you multiply that by the acreage of Central Park, and you get 49 billion, or 40, whatever it was I said, 49 billion.
But if there were businesses there, residential places there,
Be revenue.
way more than,
Yeah.
Well, like
and tax revenue.
Revenue that a skyrise makes. And I'm saying, like, is this an argument against it? Like, you have a skyrise in New York City that probably generates maybe that in a quarter.
Yeah. From what I could see, because they did a study back in 2014, I think, that looked at those, and I think they said the hotels that were surrounding it, I think, generated tax revenue about 2.1 billion. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
How many times per year does Central Park?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It's in the article, though. It's in there if I forgot what that was. Oh, yes. The question was how many tons of carbon dioxide is sequestered in Central Park. So I do not know that value. I can find it for you, though. Yeah. So if we have carbon credits, yes, it would make, you could offset some of those. Any other questions? Good questions. Yes.
we exclude gardens. Is any of this type of stuff considered when designing the rest of the Texas A&M campus and green spaces?
My guess is no. Yeah. I think, yeah. So the question was, not having the gardens would, does Texas A&M utilize this in their master planning? And the answer is probably no. So, as leaders, yeah, it's because they probably don't know about it. And maybe that's where we need to step up and let them know about it. Yes, Mason. Hmm.
I was just, not an answer, but it would make me curious if they reached out to a department like this, public needs, like maybe things like that, or like discussion,
Yeah. Yeah, so the comment was, given the new park that's being built on the, where's that? I know it's on main campus. I was trying to think where exactly. Would they actually be open to consulting with people like us before they make their decisions? Did I summarize that well enough? Yeah. Yeah. At the park. Yes. Yeah, Parks and Rec does the same, similar thing. Andy?
Do you know the value of the garden?
I do not know the value of the gardens. Do you know the value of the gardens, Dr. Arnold? Cost $11 million to build. But as far as the
That's what you're actually working on right now. The whole idea was to get big enough that you can't.
right.
Once you become so big, they can't afford to let you down.
So it'd be interesting to run an assessment on that, the gardens. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there is a tool. The question was if any of the research that I did looked at the water usage. There is a tool that does that, and I didn't talk about that. I had it listed up there, but I didn't talk about that much. But yes, there is a tool that actually EPA has, I think, 3 or 4 tools that just measure water and water usage. There's the benefits associated if you cut down water usage, some things like that, and then the impact on the water that you do use. Because there are some tools on that, yes. Oh, can you? So are you asking that are the tools being used now, or can they be used? I don't think they're being used now, but they can be used. Or yeah.
They could be, but they're not.
Right.
One of the things that you think that is difficult to assess in this part is what the actual usage is. Because we don't have an agency. Those places you have some sort of entry numbers because we're in the central part of campus. Constantly having traffic that benefiting from Burton, we have no idea how long.
Yeah, so the comment, Dr. Arnold, was that since there's no way to keep track of who is actually using the garden, it's hard to quantify the benefit of those who are using it.
Well, we did that with tracks of green. So Arcom can track on the website of the garden how many times are people accessing corrections. So last month we had 12,000 people, or 12,000 hits that requested information on how to get it.
Yeah.
So that's, not really.
Yeah.
Attendance, but
Right. So the comment. So the comment from Dr. Arnold was that they can track internet activity. Yes.
Every state has X amount of acres of green public space.
Mhm.
Have the tools to calculate benefit, economic benefit per acre.
Mhm.
Has there been a study or a model run or stuff written down where it's like Texas has, let's say, 100 acres and it has $1 billion worth of economic value?
Mhm.
Is there a comparison between all the states? The state has the most or least amount of land with that economic value per population, per acre?
I haven't come across that. I mean, there may be, but I haven't come across it. That'd be interesting. Yeah. So
based on the amount of land in
yeah.
each state, what is the economic value?
Yeah. So the question comment is that has there been a study with each state that gives a value for all the green space, that public green space that's available? You're talking about like state parks and things like that. Like state parks, if there's an economic value that's been done on those. And to my knowledge, there has not been a study done on that. Doesn't mean there's not, but I haven't come across it. Good question. Yes, Dr. Welch.
What is the value of trees? It's just huge. And trees in the landscape, it's really a serious difference.
Yeah. So what is the value of a tree? Cost-wise, I mean, as far as actually buying a tree, it's not very much. But it's like the benefits. It's priceless. What we get from a tree. I used to know some of those facts and figures, that how much one large tree can sequester 40 tons of carbon dioxide, and I forget the cooling power of that. And actually, that national tree benefit calculator gives you some of that information. I think it's Ohio State. Didn't they used to post it on trees, what the value of that tree was? Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if they still do that or not, but they used to have, this tree is worth this much to you.
That's a huge difference.
Yes. Yeah. And that's interesting, and that was a study I would like to do is eventually, is when you're looking at a house, trying to include that value in with the landscape value, because that's one thing, the house I'm in now, and I don't know how many people have told me this in my neighborhood, because several in my neighborhood have let me use them as a landscape design class project. And they said, one of the first things they say is, I'd like to have I can have a tree like it's in your yard. And I got 2 nice large trees in mine that they're, giving me a lot of shade, and everybody else is just little wimpy things. So I'm proud of my trees. That's why I bought the house, was because of the trees in front. It had some shade. They were not post oaks, no. Got 5 minutes left. Anything else? Yes.
based on what we learned last week, what is the difference in the picture of New York was
urban heat island.
what is the difference between
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that answer, but that's a good question. I'm sure we can find that out. Speaking of that, I just saw in the news this morning that College Station officials have instructed their planning, I think it's their planning department, on how to reduce the urban heat island effect in College Station. I was like, how timely? We just talked about that. So, they must have heard your lecture, Dr. Arnold. Yes, one more question.
It was really I guess I should have known, but the inequity that you talked about with, paved green space and it raised property values. Now the less wealthy can no longer afford to live there. So what's the solution? Or has anybody tried to think of a solution? I'm sure.
Now, I think College Station does this. They can put a cap on the tax, knowing that it's a lower income or lower socioeconomic situation, and they can put a cap on. That's one method they can use. If it's a historically lower value property, then they can sometimes, if that property goes up for sale, then they can cap the income of the individual buying it. So in other words, it has to be another individual who may be of lower income. So that's some programs that they have that they can, through zoning and things like that. Did I repeat the question? The question was, how do you prevent if the property value goes up? How do you prevent how do you allow the lower income people to still be able to afford to live there? Yeah, how to address the inequity. I see some comments on there. Is that